I feel like they've spent all this time adding all these rounds, and it's kind of pointless if they don't fix the zeroing. And it should. I mean, it's programmatically, it's probably not that straightforward, right? Because some of the other stuff, like audio, I can kind of forgive them for because it's just tricky, right? Whereas like this is part of the milsimi realistic dream the battle state has. This is supposed to be like their jam, right? And that's why this in particular, I'm like, guys, you have to kind of fix this because it's part of like what I see them as being experts at.
Welcome to Scav Talk, an Escape from Tarkov podcast with a continued focus on development of the game, patch note analysis, theory crafting, and joint gameplay discussions. My name is Church. I'm one of your hosts. I am a video editor for Airwing Marine and Rockmom.
I'm GigaBeef, a Tarkov YouTuber helping you guys get better at the game that we know and love, which is Escape from Tarkov. And welcome back to Scav Talk, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful week. We've been, well, I guess, what's been happening in your world, Church, this week? Has there been much Tarkov? It's pretty slow right now, right?
Yeah, same as usual. I did log on with the buddy to get some screenshots for him for one of his projects, one of my editing buddies. So that was it. That was the raid. And then I got one tapped. It was weird, man. It's just like, God, Tarkov really loves kicking your balls, but I literally walked. I shot at a scav. I missed with because I had to get on my USEC account, my level 1 account, because he wanted the USEC and not a bear. So, anyways, I shoot the scav. He goes inside the reserve, one of the pond buildings or whatever. I follow him. I walk past the stairs. I was just gonna like strafe and just like hip fire and shoot him, and he one taps me. And I'm thinking, oh man, he got a headshot. That's crazy, right? I look at the death screen, and it's like 2 hits on my chest. And then collateral left arm with PS. And it was just a regular scav, wasn't a raider. And I asked him, I was like, my buddy, I was like, did he one tap me? And he was like, what? And then I was like, and I told him what happened with the death screen. He was like, I only heard 1 shot. I'm thinking, oh my God, dude. Now scavs are like also producing this like multi-hit bug. It just like, I literally had pack armor on, so like it didn't do anything, but like makes me think like, whenever you encounter those cracked scavs that just like shred you up, it's like, are they just shooting a single bullet and it's like registering multiple times or whatever? Like, I have no idea. Is it fragmentation going on? I don't know. But it was like, Tarkov. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
what was that? A 762 by 39 PS?
Yeah.
One of those boys. Because what is actually the fragmentation chance on that guy? It is 25%. So it's not inconsequential, I suppose. But I had actually a very similar situation. It was I think it was one of the very first TikToks that I made. It was me getting, and it was clear that the scav's only shooting 1 round at a time, and I got one tapped with M61. And I was like, maybe it was a frag, but the M61 fragmentation is really, really low, which made me very, very suspect. It's 13%. So again, it's possible, but just does make you wonder sometimes. That there was also somebody else who was, I actually can't remember who this was now. It's kind of bad, but somebody was messaging me on some platform somewhere. Like it's very hard to keep track of of everybody across the on like YouTube comments, and then on Twitch live stream, and then across like Insta and Twitter and Discord. Is like so many. But someone was telling me about potentially some issue which I haven't looked at, where you should get shot in the arm, and then if you get shot, like, I can't remember exactly how it was. It was like if you get shot in the lower arm, it can travel through to the upper arm and then hit you twice or something. There's like some weird thing maybe that was going on, but I hadn't looked into it properly. I don't know. So I mean, it's just so hard to tell and test with these things until we have co-op offline. It just makes it so hard to test these things because it's just so much time and work to go in and monitor this stuff, and you really have to just be able to iterate many times, go into factory offline, shoot each other, check the end screen, leave again, come back in, leave again, come back in, because it's so hard. Because if you try to do 2-player testing, because I've done a little bit of testing recently, like more than I've ever done, because I've always stayed away from this kind of thing just because it was always really tough. We have to, like, unless you've got 5 to go into factory, which we probably could have done in the end, but there weren't enough people at the beginning. You have to go to shoreline, you like to skirt around the edges, and you have to make sure you don't bump into anybody. You have to bring all the stuff you want to test with on your back, and it's painful. So I don't know, lots of these things go untested, I think, just because of the people just can't be bothered to do it. It's just annoying.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot of work, and it's especially it depends what kind. Like some things are easier than others, but yeah, testing armor with different ammos, and you have to bring them in. You have to ruin good armor
Yep.
to go and do it, and it's not really a big deal towards the end of the wipe. But again, with suppressor testing, you have to bring all the suppressors into the raid and reattach and detach them off your gun, and that kind of thing. So it's not not the best. It's not the best. I think that's yeah. I mean, the flechette one was kind of funny because we were thinking about like what the best way to do that was. Even how do you test with a couple of people without 5 going into factory? Because that's where most people do it. But we end up going to shoreline, and we're like, well, actually, we don't need more than 2 to do the actual testing. One person with a shotty, and I want them to shoot me. Really, I did end up taking the other people's perspectives because we ended up having all people who could record, which is good. But I was like, well, if I have the local recording of me getting shot, then it's consistent, it's easy, and I have it on my computer as well. It means I don't have to fiddle around with it or do anything with it. So I just had one person with a shotgun and then me, but we had a third person as well, which is Deep Space Wonder from my Discord, and he was just on protection duty. So he had like the third, and he was just like roaming around with the scope, just like making sure that people didn't come over and listen to what these random individual shots of flechette were in the corner of the map. So I don't know, it's good. It's a good community bonding exercise, but other than that, yeah, I just can't wait for a co-op offline. Oh, it would be so good. It'd be so good. It'd be so good. I think that's the issue. It's right. Tarkov is supposed to be in testing. We're supposed to be testing this kind of thing, but we're not given the tools to do so.
Yeah, it's like testing in a live setting.
Yeah, which is fine, and I understand their rationale sometimes, where they're like, we kind of want, we want to see what the community's reaction is, or that kind of thing, which is fine. But if you're testing like game mechanics, should be a better way of actually doing that, because otherwise bugs just go unnoticed for ages. People aren't sure whether they're bugs or not. People talk about getting quad tapped with BP by raiders, and I know that the big streamers are still complaining about getting multi tapped by labs raiders, by like bosses, guards, whatever. Like you get hit 3-4 times with BP, but it only sounds like one shot. And I know Battlestate in the past have said no, it's not a bug, and then sometimes oh no, but it is a bug, and like no one really knows. It makes it kind of hard, but yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. I guess we should just cover the news off quickly before we go on to other stuff. So RMT updates is in full force. They've made some tweaks to the RMT updates, it seems.
Yeah,
I think you can now. I think you can now bring in. Well, they've changed it, so I don't think the actual. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the actual RMT changes have changed at all. So whatever the RMT changes were, so you can't bring any loot items. That's just as it is. But then the things that have been adjusted are other items that are not loot that you bring into raid, like thermals and things like that, where you can only bring it a bit like bags, right? Where you can only bring in 5 thermal scopes, for example. So you can only bring in like 5 flares for your buddies, which I mean, it still seems like a lot to me. But there's a couple of those things. It's like you can only carry so many of these items into raid, and there was a couple of different ones. Thermals was the ones that came to mind. I don't think there were any others that particularly mattered off the top of my head. I'd have to go and have a look at the changes again. But
I was gonna say I must have missed this because I don't remember gear. So my understanding is that what they did is a couple of months, maybe longer ago, they put a bunch of carry limits on items. So like 3 GPUs, 2 GPUs, 5 GP coins, 3 Bitcoins. There's like just a max you could carry on your character.
Yeah.
And so they loosened that a bit with this latest change because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's weird because, and like, I would just think that you could just remove them completely, but I guess they just want to like cover their bases in a way. But I guess the logic is because you can't drop these items. You would have to find 3 Letixes, which is like highly unlikely. So it's like the reason they put in the carry limit was to counteract RMT. That was the reason. So now there's a new mechanic that shortcuts that, So it's like
I guess it's
the old
kind of
mechanic doesn't really make sense anymore.
It's sort of like, well, I don't know. I feel like they're 2 different systems working in tandem, because one is about I mean, it's not about finding raid items, but it encompasses finding raid items, right? The
Mm-hmm.
old system encompasses finding raid items because you can only carry so
Yes.
many. So if you found 3 lead X's, you wouldn't be able to take them all out of the raid, and that,
Right.
to me, targets people using cheats to be able to see all the stuff is and hoover up all the good loot and not be able to take out loads of things out of one raid. I guess whether that has the desired effect, I don't know. And then the other side of it is about not being able to bring in stuff to then give to those players who are paying. It would be my impression. So the latest changes basically, before you could only take in 280k, but it's actually been like raised for some reason. So you could only take in 280k. Now you could take in 400k into raid.
Mm-hmm.
You could take in $4,000. Now you can take in 8,000. Same with euros. 4 bitcoins rather than 3. 10 GP coins rather than 7. I mean, it's like kind of big numbers, right? Like 10
Yeah, but
10
like
GP coins.
it doesn't make sense because you bring them in, you can't drop them, and if you
No, you can't drop
die
them if
or
you bring them in anyway. So this is all about found and raid items. Like you can
right,
now have 2 key cards.
but why
Sorry,
even
three
there's
labs key
so
cards.
many?
It's just like, why even fiddle with it, really? I get this is just like quality of life for like actual players. I think real players, you can have 3. You can get 3 key card. Like if you already have a key card and you find 2 more key cards in raid, you can now keep them all rather than having to
Mm-hmm.
discard one. If you so happen to find 2 blue cards or 2 violet cards or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that seems to be the idea. So that was that. But then the next set of changes was the restrictions in raid 1. So you can bring 5, and because this was a restriction that wasn't there before but now is in place. So you can bring in 5 T7 goggles at most, or have 5 on you at any one time, I guess, is the deal. Same with PNV10s, same with basically all the night visions and all the thermals.
This
It's kind of
on
strange.
Tarkov changes?
Yes. So the Tarkov changes one. The first one is the one that we were talking about before.
Oh, there's a
And then the previous one is, I think it's listed as the day before or something. But that's
I
the one that
see.
I'm talking about. And there's actually more
Okay.
there. And there was a discard limit as well changed. So rather than it being 1 per stim, it's now 2 per stim. So now you can
Oh,
discard
okay.
2 Propitols per raid rather than just the 1. To a
Okay.
buddy or whatever. So that
Right.
was tweaked slightly. And yeah, you can only take in 5 of all the thermals and all the night vision sides.
Okay.
So just in case you might want to be giving someone 20 thermal scopes for
Right,
RMT, but you
right,
can still bring
right.
5 in for your squad, I guess. I was like
I mean, you could
brainstorming it, wondering
still
whether.
you could just do
Mhm.
4 different
Yeah, you
raids.
just do it for different raids, but it's a pain. The one thing
Mm-hmm.
I was musing about, because I was like, hang on a sec, because I was like, the restrictions in raid. I was like mulling over in my brain whether there was any way that you could do something silly like bring in, but it doesn't work like this. I was trying to muse whether there was some way of being like, you bring in like 5, throw 4 away, but then one person, like when the person sees your body, then like it disappears because it's like 1 over the limit or something. But I was like, no, there's no way to like gamify it so that you wouldn't ever get it back. Like, when I first saw it, that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, maybe there's
How
a
could
way
you?
so that
Yeah.
how could you do it? So, not that I would get it back, but how could you do it so when the person comes to loot you, the thermal
Mm-hmm.
scope's just like magically vaporized? But I don't think it works like that, unfortunately, because that would be kind of funny.
Well,
If it's just like, well, if I can't get it back, then you can't have it either, kind of thing.
there is an interesting. I think it's very very niche, but in the events you have Red Rebel, and you find a Red Rebel, you take the found in raid 1 and put it into your slot, and put the non-found in raid 1 into your backpack or container if you really want. But you we'll stick with the backpack analogy. If you put it in your backpack and you die, it gets vaporized, but you get
True.
to keep the other Red Rebel. If you survive, then now you have an extra Red Rebel that you could vendor or whatever. You can't give it to a friend, but you can vendor
Mm-hmm.
it. So there's a little bit of extra
I
money.
see.
There's similar examples of like keys. Instead
Yeah.
of putting it, you just swap them out, and then if you die, the other guy doesn't. They're missing out loot. So it's like a
It's a spite thing rather
secondary.
than,
It
yeah.
I mean, it is and it isn't because yeah. I mean, actually, well, yeah, I guess. But like, I don't know. I'm trying to think what would be what else would you do? I mean, that just seems that's just where my brain goes, and it seems like the default thing to do because you're not.
Mm.
I don't know. It's just an extra way to crank out rubles if it makes sense. Slots per rubles. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
with the math, but
Which it
an
might well do with these high
interesting,
value items, but
interesting interaction there. I
yeah,
don't know. It's kind
exactly,
of
exactly.
I just that I don't know. I don't like it. I
Um,
don't like
I
it,
don't
Giga.
think it really changes too much, but it's just like, that's happened. And then the only other thing I think was that like the flea fees, there was a whole load of videos going around saying like the flea fees have changed. They've changed the formula so that when you try to put up X item at 90k, it's
Hmm.
the fee is now 120k. And then there was a whole another load of videos that came out saying like you put the item up for 90k and it says 120k, but then you click the button and
Yeah.
it's only 10k or whatever it used to be. And then it seems like now that was a cosmetic effect, and then now that's actually gone.
Right.
So, well, as in gone, as in it now costs what it says on the screen again. So it
Right.
seems to have come in two stages. Um, but
Right. Just
I think that's yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it. But yeah, I mean, just before we move on, for total clarity, this today is Wednesday the 18th, the day that we're recording this. I'm actually going to be away over the weekend, and so that is the reason why we're recording early. A, for everybody live, and or B, for anybody who's listening later on at the regular times. If there's something comes out between, I guess, the 18th and the 20th, when we would normally have recorded this. So at the moment, nothing else has come out, but that's why we're doing it a little bit early.
hmm
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else you've been looking at, but I've been having a good time. A good time in raid. It's been pretty fun. I finally have been getting through some of the last lot of quests.
So I've been hearing people say, and I really don't trust them, but I'm curious what you have to say. Is that there's been a lot of hackers, a lot of sus, like more white names suspicious than normal. Do you have any say on that one way or the other?
I don't know. Lots of people, because I saw some people talking about, oh, there's lots of hackers on Factory as well. Da da da. Maybe it's about the time of day that I've been playing, like
Hmm.
midday Europe. I'm not
Hmm.
sure, but well, I say midday, but like early afternoon European time. But so far, I've not really run into any suspicious situations at all. But I don't run into suspicious situations that often
Hmm.
anyway. So take what I say with a grain of salt, because
Yeah.
either I'm playing kind of carefully, tactically. I don't normally like super rush the loot, but I've been playing a lot of Factory. I mean, I guess some people were saying that there were people hacking on Factory, but there's not really much point. I mean, it's only going to be people who are hacking for the sake of it rather than people trying to make money, you would have thought. Like
Hmm.
taking people's gear out from PvP is not really that profitable anyway, and hacking on Factory, you're basically going to have to run into people. There's no loot on the map,
Hmm.
so I don't really see the point. So I've
Yeah.
always,
You would be.
again, I've taken that with a pinch of salt when people have said that,
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
I've not really had any issues there. I've been having a really fun time actually on Factory, surviving a lot and killing people running around with the flechette. Basically, I was trying to finish Grenadier because it's one that I've just put off until the end of the wipe, and it's got other awful quests behind it like night kills and stuff, which it's just not my forte. It really is not my forte. So I've just been running around in there with one impact nade in hand. Um,
I love it.
you go in, you
Oh,
pull the
dude.
pin, you hold the button down, and you just sprint around. And yeah, half the time I was sprinting around with like the Redoute T5 on and a Tagilla face visor with an
Mm.
impact nade, just like charging around
Giga
the
Chad.
hallways of yeah, it's really funny. And there's been some funny moments, but those
Yeah.
things they're actually really busted. Honestly, I've not used them that much because I know that they're really good, and
Hmm.
after using them a lot, they are. I can confirm that they're really good. They're still really good. The number of random people that I've just killed straight up, guy wearing full Tagilla, another guy like level 40 odd wearing just like full decent gear. It's just bang, click, bang. The only one that I had, which was hilarious, was one guy was too close. He was a pistol guy, and he couldn't kill me in time. But he was too close, and I bounced it off the wall, and it didn't go off. And I was like, "Huh? What? It didn't go
Yeah.
off?" And I pulled out the Psycho 12 and just flechetted him. And then 3 seconds later, it went off on the floor, like next to both of us. I was like, "Oh god, okay, it wasn't a bug. It did go off." But if you read it, there's a minimum time.
To
I
arm
didn't
it.
really know how I didn't know how the
Hmm.
mechanic really worked, but I think it's half a second or something. So if it's traveling under half a second and hits something straight away, it then has the 3 second normal, like a regular grenade
Right.
fuse. and then goes off. Because I was like, huh, what's happened here? Because it didn't go off, but I was apparently too close and it hit the wall behind the dude, and he didn't die. But that was funny. There was a guy fighting Tagilla, and we just saw like him like running forwards, then him running back, Tagilla like running past him, and then I just impacted him. Yeah, it's busted. I mean, you can only buy one per reset now, so it's not that bad, and it's on a barter as well. And with the flakiness of the flea, like one time we went to go and I can't remember which one it is because I always get them confused, the RGO versus the RGN.
Mm-hmm.
And but one of them, the one that's for 3 paid can barter item doodads, I was like, oh, let's do 3 paid, that's fine, it's gone to the flea. And there were 3. There was one at like 45k and 2 at 99,000. I was like, oh god, the player base. Oh, I forgot. I was like, well, I'm not paying like an insane amount for one of those. We'll do the other one and we'll leave it for a minute and then wait until they're like, I think I got them for 30k in the end. So I was just like, well, 90,000. I mean, it's a lot, but it is basically a free kill. So on factory anyway. I mean, man, it's just they're nuts.
I think the broken part, at least on factory specifically, I'll say, I don't know. Tiggs, I was watching him the other day and he had an impact nade and he was holding it. And he was like, guys, this is so busted. Like, look at my PMC. He's just like sitting here. He was like camping. I think he was camping D2, like on top of the vents or the door or whatever. He's just like trolling. And he's like, guys, this is so busted. Look at my stamina. It's not moving at all. And like, you can literally just hold it there for the eternity. You can sprint, full around. But I think it would make more sense, realism, and also help with the balancing a bit if the longer you hold grenades, your like arm stamina goes down, and maybe like your, you know how your gun bobs, maybe like your hand bobs, so when you throw it's less accurate, and maybe you just throw it like like a real wimpy throw, and it goes like beep, it just falls right at your feet. That'd be hilarious if you reach like 0 stamina. But yeah, no, I've done the impact nades on factory, got a couple kills for grenadier, and it is very it's fun, but it's pretty busted. But
yeah, I just don't know how a solo player is supposed to actually get these kills otherwise. I mean, by the time that I got to Grenadier, well, by the time they got around to actually looking at trying to complete Grenadier, I had I think I had either 2 or 3 kills of the 12. Whereas normally by this time in the wipe, I would normally have more like 8 to 10, I would say, in pre 12-12. Just because these days using grenades is really hard. You normally before be in situations where you're in a room or in a building or someone's behind a wall or whatever, and you chuck one over and then push them. But it's just so hard with the whole take the nade and unclick the thing and then throw the dude out. Like if you're anywhere near them and you're on your own, they just push you and you die, and it makes it really hard to use them. So that's the thing about the impact, honestly, that I quite like. And to be honest, it might even work with the VOG 25s. I don't think anybody really used to do it like this, but I think it actually would work the same. Like the fact that you've already got it out is the thing, because as soon as you throw it, you pull your gun back up, and it's like 12, 11 nades. You know what I mean? And that's the reason why it works so well, because it's the whole pin pulling situation that makes it problematic. So as long as you've got it ready already, and you don't want to. I mean, I died one time. I only had one real fail with it, and I was coming from the expansion big room with the medical tent into the forklifts kind of tunnels, but then there's that new tunnel that connects that room into forklifts. I started to come down there, and there was a guy right hand peeking right at the end, and I was like, huh, with the nade, it didn't go far enough, and then I tried to flechette him, but then he killed me, and that was the only like real fail that I had. Because outside of that, as long as you just live in the tunnels, holding your grenade, for dear life, it's like if people can't get out of the way, it's just like it's nuts. But it's really funny. It is funny. Yeah, it's good. And then as soon as we finished that, I was like, well, I have the Saiga 12. So then we just ran around with Saiga 12 and cleared the lobby like 3 times. I was trying to die with the kit, really. I was like, we're just gonna play this until I die. And it's just like 3 waves later, it's just like 4 PMCs, 4 PMCs, 3 PMCs. I was like, is this really super strong? Like, is it really that? It is really that strong. It is. I think one thing about Flechette that I will say, because I know I did the video about Flechette quite recently, and it's mental, right? If you hit all your shots on somebody's thorax, no armor in the game is gonna last more than 4 hits. It's completely broken, right? Like two hits to Gazelle, it dies. That's it, you're gone. Current, gone. 3 hits to the decent armor, like the Reduce M, 3 and you're blasted. But it only really works close up because you have to hit a lot of the pellets. But the thing that's beautiful about it, because I used the ash a little bit afterwards, back to a regular gun with regular bullets. Yeah, it's lots of damage, but you have to hit. The thing about Flechette is that it works so well on factory because people are really close. People typically don't go in with like the thickest gear of all time. Like you do get some alt in people, but it still dispatches that armor quite quickly too because of the durability. But
Yep.
there's lots of people who just have pistols and not much else. And tons of people are going with no armor at all. And the beauty of that is you only have to just wave it in their general direction,
Yeah.
connect three or four flechettes, and they die. And it's like it kind of covers all bases. It's like it's so good. And I was only using the 10 rounders as well. I wasn't even using the 20s because the 20s were 100k at the time. I actually ended up selling one, but the 10's fine. It's okay. It's really, honestly, it's so good. Flechette is so busted. I really wish. I think that they should decrease the pen slightly to just stop it from churning through the armor quite that quickly. I think it is a little broken.
I see. I'm of a different opinion in that we can have really good stuff. I just think the accessibility is just too much. Like, yeah, I would rather like that could be an interesting find and raid ammo only because then it makes shotguns like really good. Like I'm, Flechette versus AP20. I don't know how you feel now. I think earlier in the wipe you were more of an AP20 guy. Am I quoting
I
you
mean,
correctly?
I still am. I still am
Really?
really. It's just like it's just factory though that I'm just like
Okay.
it's so good close up. That's the thing. But outside of 15 or 20 meters, it's like AP20 I'll take every day.
Man, yeah. See, I'm different because the way I find is that class 5 is just really once you get Prapor 3, you can run Karuns, and then
Mm.
later on you can get Gazelles. But even that's the thing, AP20s kind of has a hard time going through class 4. Whereas Flechettes, yeah, it does have a hard time, but you're not as accurate. You can't take those long range shots, but you're trading that scenario for death by volume. You just spam the trigger and they fall eventually. Unless they're like really far out, then it's much harder. Like a couple wipes ago, I was like doing some meme kits and I took a Sega and a really thick kit and I had that rig that has two 2x2 slots for like drum
Yeah, yeah.
mags. And what I did is I loaded one flechette and one AP20 and alternated flechette AP20, flechette AP20, which was just like completely insane because it takes so long to do it in the stash. And then when you're in raid, you have to like, if you want to do it correctly, you gotta look at what's in the top of the magazine and then load that. As soon as it loads
Yes, because
one,
there's
then
one
you
in the chamber
cancel
already.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you
Oh
cancel it,
god.
and then you alternate, and then you cancel it, and then you just alternate. Yeah, it was ridiculous. But even back then, dude, I remember rushing the third story of dorms, and the guy was like in the room to the right, just like holding behind furniture or whatever. And he kind of caught me off guard, and I just started like spamming my shotgun, and he died. And I looked at his armor, and he had a slick on, and it was like half out of whatever it was, and I was like, man, this is pretty good. I mean, mind you, it was the idea I had is like I'll use the flechette rounds to like destroy their armor because it has like really high armor damage. It's like one of the
Yeah.
highest, I think. And then the AP20s to finish them off, And then if they're at range, it's like kind of the same idea. It's like I'll tickle them with the flechettes and then hit them with the AP20s. But anyways, yeah, I think this wipe I use exclusively flechettes, and it just was like I only have one time where they let me down. And I think that was because either I was like slightly aiming above them because they were probably like we were fighting that construction on customs. And I was kind of like near the pocket watch area, and they were like um kind of across that elbow connector that leads to the crack house. They were like kind of like across from that,
Oh yeah.
closer towards
That's quite far.
well, they weren't actually in the connector. They were like
Coming towards
the
over that way
opposites.
anyway.
They were coming from the hole in the wall.
Yeah.
So they were like on the other side of the anyways.
Mhm.
Not that there's too many hole in the walls. Whatever. Anyways, point being they were probably like in between like 30 and 40 meters if I had to guess. And I think I was just like I like to think I was slightly off target, but maybe just like the pellets didn't land where I wanted them to, so I got kind of screwed by range there. But otherwise, dude, it was just like, yeah, just pull the trigger and they die eventually. It's kind of crazy, but yeah. Point
Yeah.
being, I would like to see that be like a fine, like AP20 and flechette fine and rate only, because AP20 is pretty cool, in that it's the most powerful slug in the game as far as pin, and then flechette would be like the most powerful traditional buckshot
Yeah.
ammo, and yeah, it would make shotguns, because I don't what I don't want is like, oh, flechettes is really good, you know, let's nerf them. Now it's like no one runs shotguns. You know what I mean? Now it's like actually kind of legit to run shotguns. You know, it's like a niche meta. But yeah, I don't know, because yeah, that's the thing. It's just like everything's accessible, so like the most best in slot thing just becomes the meta. You know, it's like
Yeah.
mutant, RSS. That's just, or sorry, SR25? It's just like the only two guns you ever see. You know, and their solution is like, we'll nerf this. And then someone's like, oh, buff this gun. And like, okay, we'll buff this gun. And that gun becomes the new thing. And it's like, let's just have cool stuff, but just balance it by making it really rare so it's fun and exciting when you come across it, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There probably is actually a better way than just nerfing the stats. Because the thing is, I wouldn't even want to nerf it to oblivion. Like, you just change it by like 3% or so, or 3 pen points, and then just see. So there's two ways of going about it. But I think I
Sure.
maybe even like that better. I would just wish there was more balance to the loot pool, so that you could more consistently get the good things rather than just it being like a crapshoot all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's another topic.
Sure.
So yeah, that's been fun. And Flechette's been good.
Mhm.
It's primarily what I've been up to be honest. I mean, other than using the SKS, but put a video out today about the SKS, which is pretty good. But oh yeah, one thing that I did want to speak about, because so you kind of touched on it with AP20, and given we're on the topic already, I'm doing a bit of an investigation into some of the slugs as well, because there's been like every time that I talk about shotguns and something comes up about shotties in general, I always get like a ton of comments from people being like, oh, but have you tried this slug, and have you tried this slug, and oh, this slug's really good. And the one that normally comes up is like, oh, what about super performance slugs, because I think these things are really underrated because they're really, really fast and they do 220 damage. And so, you know, you shoot somebody and then they're all like, half their health has disappeared in one hit, and, you know, they're very scared, and, you know, it's very, very damaging to people. And so I've been doing a little bit of research into that, and I might do something, because I feel like it's not one of those things where I've just seen it enough. I've seen enough people talk about it to think that it warrants some further investigation. And it's more complicated than I originally thought, partly because of the bugs that we've got. Well, it's not even a bug. It's just like the feature, the zeroing feature, the way that it works right now makes it difficult.
Yeah.
It makes it very difficult. So the fundamental problem is all of the shotguns are all zeroed for 7mm buckshot, all of them. The problem with 7mm buckshot is its ballistic coefficient. So it's actually got like a relatively regular shotgunny type initial starting speed. I think it's about 450 meters per second. The problem with it, though, is it's got a really, really low ballistic coefficient. And ballistic coefficient, the lower it is, the worse it travels through air. So that means that it slows down much more quickly. And it actually loses, I was looking at this earlier because when I was doing the research, by 50 meters, it's already lost 55% of its velocity, which is pretty nuts. Now, the problem then is, if you then load a slug into the shotgun, it uses the same zeroing thing, right? And the one thing that Tarkov does do well, because I've spoken to Tara about this and he's the expert on this kind of thing, is that Tarkov does take into account the slowdown in the zeroing of various rounds. So if you're using the default round for a particular gun, then it's very, very good, and it works everything out, and everything should, in theory, outside of MOA differences and all that stuff, it should be pinpoint precise if you're at the right distance, if you zero it to the right distance. The problem is, though, is that these slowdown characteristics now are taken into account when you're loading in a slug. So trying to use the zeroing doesn't make any sense at all. If you zero it from, I had a hammer scope on, if you zero from 50 meters up to 200 meters, at 200 meters, the gun is like so high up in the air. Like, it's just like, it doesn't even make, I think it might like it sort of breaks the model. Like, it doesn't even make sense. You can see, so I was using a 153 with a salvo 12. You can see the end of the salvo 12 in the optic.
Right.
It's so high up, because it would need to be, right, if it was 7mm buckshot.
Right.
because it was on some kind of ridiculous paintball arc at this point.
Mhm.
But clearly for slug, that doesn't make any sense because the slugs have much higher ballistic coefficients and fly through the air much, much better. But there's no way of actually fixing this. So I first had to look at super performance so far, and I was like, okay, well, maybe this one is going to make some sense. But the problem is that, as you might imagine, you shoot above your target, or in almost all situations, which is just a weird.
Well,
It's just a horrible way around. I
you
just don't
mean
like it.
you aim with your scope above your center point of your scope. Is that what?
As in, so if you fire, even at 50 meters, so the lowest zeroing that I could get to on any sensible scope, because some of the little dots are 25, but at that range it doesn't really matter. So 50
Yeah.
meters is normally the lowest point. When you fire, the round just hits just like way too high.
Right.
Because
So
you have to
treat your center, not the center of the scope. You have to go up a couple notches based off how far away they are. Basically,
yeah,
is that
so
what
as
you're
in
saying?
so rather than it being like hold overs, it's like hold unders. So you have to hold your
Mm.
and the problem with that is that it goes. I can kind of deal with rounds shooting a little bit low,
Right.
because that's sort of anybody who's played other milsimi-esque games in general that have any kind of bullet drop whatsoever are sort of used to that. Like people who played
Yeah.
PUBG, Tarkov, whatever, used to sort of trying to adjust for that. Sorry, oh, my throat is very dry.
Even Apex
Oh,
has bullet velocity and bullet drop.
yeah. So people are used to keeping their sight over their target, but going the other way around just goes against all muscle memory. It's a little bit like
Right.
meta in some ways. So at really any distance, it goes so high super performance compared to, well, I guess where the center of your scope is, and there's nothing that you can really do to fix it, which is sort of a shame. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
There's not really anything you can do about it. But there's even more complicated stuff. So I was like, actually, but is there a round that it makes sense for? And I'm still kind of going through this combination of things, because the problem is that the super performance one is the one with the highest accuracy.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
so many parameters that we're thinking about now, because you don't want a slug that does too little damage, because otherwise it's going to take too many shots, especially if you're trying to fire at range. The penetration doesn't really matter. I'm kind of ignoring that for the moment because they're all so low that it doesn't. You're basically going to have to shoot their legs from distance. But then you don't want to go too far down the accuracy percentage scale either, because the weapons, even the good weapons, start at like 9 or 10 MOA. So once you get to 100 meters, you can't really hit with them. Now, I was actually quite surprised by this because I'd never really gone to look at it. If you load in a super performance slug into a 153 with like 9.5 MOA, it literally goes down to like 3 MOA. Like it's actually very
It's really
extreme. It's
good.
much more extreme than I thought it would be. And so from there, you've got the copper sabo, which is 150, FTX custom, which is 135, the lead slug, which is 120, and it kind of just goes down from there. And each time you go down that chain of accuracy, it like, the MOA is like widening out. And you're like, oh, do I even want to go down this far? Oh, I'm not sure. So the one that I'm looking at the moment is this the copper sabo premier HP slug, which I actually think might be the next best thing, because it does 206 damage versus super performance is 220, so it doesn't really matter, because over literally any distance super performance won't two-shot people anyway, because 220 times 2 is 440, which is precisely the health of a PMC. So with any damage drop off at all, then it won't two-shot them anymore, whereas 206 is just good enough. It's just as good because of the way the breakpoint works, because it's still three hits to kill. Now I'm looking through and just figuring out exactly what to do, because the bizarre thing about it, which I'll end my rant in a second, but the bizarre thing about it is, so super performance is by far the fastest slug, and this is why it's so bad, because it's got better ballistic performance than buckshot, and it starts out way quicker as well. So it's just like the buckshot's just like this, right? And super performance is just off at the speed of light into the distance. Whereas something like the lead slug, the 1270 lead slug, which I don't think anybody has ever used in the history of Tarkov, is really slow at like 370 meters per second. It's actually slower than the buckshot. So even though the zeroing is wrong, because the round is slow, that sort of maybe makes up for it. So I think there's a sweet spot somewhere around FTX and the copper, where even though they're slugs, the zeroing coincidentally works anyway. And that's kind of what I'm trying to test. I'm not done with it at all,
Mm.
but I'm sort of musing with that because it'd be interesting because people keep telling me about these flesh round slugs and being like, oh, it's so good, and you look at this and look at that, and I had a look at Rip, but Rip doesn't really have that great. It's only 80 on accuracy, so you're not going to be making 100-meter shots with it. So that's kind of my benchmark. If you can't make a 100-meter shot with it, then what's the point? I want to be sniping people with these shotties. It's gonna be funny. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I don't know, have you ever used these guys? Because there's so many of these bullets in
Ye-
these shells in the game.
Yeah, definitely a couple of them. What's the one that is it the dual copper? Well, there's one
There's
that
copper
fires
sabo, and then
two.
there's dual sabo, which is two
Oh
by
yeah.
85.
Yeah, I've tried messing with that a bit. I thought that was an interesting round, but I did like this swipe. I did end up using the FTX custom. It's like I had when you were talking about this topic, I had to go look up super performance because I was like, is that the gray rounds or like the dark gray round? Because I know one of them. Basically, what ends up happening every wipe is I get to the Jaeger shotgun task where you have to like shoot scavs in the leg or shoot scavs in the head from X distance, and I go to like these highly accurate rounds, and I always have to like look them up to remember which one's which and
Yeah.
which one's the one to use. But I ended up using the FTX custom because the super performance was sold out from Jaeger 4, and I think crafting them was like going to be really expensive. I think I did end up crafting them anyways, but yeah, ended up using the custom light slug, which is like um pretty decent pin 20, and decent damage, decent accuracy. Like it's an okay round, but
Yeah.
to answer your question from earlier, how do you fix this issue with the zeroing and stuff? You just use a 25 millimeter sight, and sometimes you just gotta try to shoot sniper scav from 100 meters away if you're 25 red dot and hope you're hitting him, because you'll be sitting there like bang, bang, bang. God, I hope no one notices me. Bang, bang, bang. Please, we die already. Bang. So yeah, that's the secret sauce is you just completely avoid it. Dude, hearing you talk that last segment about like, there's possibly this one thing where the two mechanics intersect and it works out. I'm just like, oh, my brain hurts. Why can't it just be so simple? Like there's got to be an
Yeah.
easier way to do this. There's got to be an
I
easier
mean,
way.
there is, right? Like both in my zeroing video that I did, both Dan Exer, who pitched it to Nikita himself, and
Mm-hmm.
Tower, like 2 years previous, both came up with independently the same model of fixing it, which is
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in the weapon you have a drop down and you pick the round,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it, and it zeroes it for that round. Great.
Yeah.
Like people who don't want to do it, they can keep with the default round, and you just keep it empty. It
Yeah.
doesn't affect anybody, and only affects the people who actually want to bother with it. And then you're going to zeroed for that round. That's it. It's easy. So easy. Such an easy situation.
My thing is
What's
though, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go for it. No, go for it. I was gonna move on to something else.
My thing is BSG don't prioritize any of that stuff unless it's like really big on the community list. In my mind, what they're prioritizing and finishing the game, and that doesn't fall into that category, is everything's going to get shifted to later, and they prefer, what can we slap on there to like, fix the issue. If you do you remember we talked about this before, you remember dynamic traders, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to like, you know, garner hate towards Pastelli or anything, but he kind of twisted the arm of VSG in a way. VSG was like, get rid of the cash now, get rid of it. Like, stop. You're breaking the system. He was like, I'm not getting rid of it. I earned it, And so BSG was just like, and I think he sort of was just like, this needs to be removed. I can't remember the details. I mean, it was so long ago, but long story short, we never really got to see that system, that idea that they came up with. This is like, that was their thing. And they never really got to like iterate upon it. And so it's just been shelved/removed. So I don't know. That's like the copium tank for me, is like once the game's finished, it's like, right, now we're gonna get all the bugs fixed, and you're gonna design some really well thought out systems and whatnot. That's like the huffing the copium for me. I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I'm honestly skeptical, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. That's actually quite funny that you brought up the dynamic traders and the economic side of it, because that's basically how we ended up starting this podcast in the first place. It's quite funny, but I don't know. It's I mean, yeah, it's just the economy stuff is like is one thing, but I just feel like they've spent all this time adding all these rounds, and it's kind of pointless if they don't fix the zeroing. And it should. I mean, it's programmatically, it's probably not that straightforward, right? But they've rendered half of what they've added useless by virtue of the system that they have, which is a real shame.
In that the zeroing makes them really unusable, is what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. And to be fair, maybe they were like, well, there's no point in doing it yet because 1212 is going to have the flatter ballistic trajectories anyway, which,
Correct.
to be honest, did fix a lot of the problems. Like, I remember I was going around looking for the issues, and I actually forgot about this one until I stumbled upon it the other day. But when I went back and looked at the 9mm thing, where it was just like, oh, you're using the 9mm with the STM, and it's the worst sniper ever because it's all for PST, but then you try to use 7N31, what's now called PvP, and you try and use that in it, and it's just like it goes way too high because, like, especially with the MP5 SD, it was like really bad because that's got really slow velocity on it, and so it's correct for PST at the slower velocity because it's minus 33% or something because the way it works, because it slows down all the rounds, which means then PvP just like flies off into space. But then after changing to 1212, when I went back and was just like, oh yeah, this is going to be a great clip, and I was like, oh, it's actually not really that bad. Like it's way better than it used to be, just because the old system just amplified those problems like more than you would think. And so with that fix, it's like, okay, well, actually, some of these are better than they were before. And now from this point, okay, we've still got these fringe issues. I guess the fundamental question is whether they're better off fixing other things rather than this. Like to your point, they're trying to finish the game, fix stuff like audio, right? You can still play the game. Most people don't even understand how the system functions completely, right? And you can play the game for 1,000 hours without ever experiencing, well, maybe you just don't realize why it's happening, but you know, it's not something that's like game breaking unless you're doing very specific things. So I mean, we're talking about shooting people with super performance slugs at 100 meters with a shotgun. How many people are actually doing that? It's like not that many, right? So the core of the game is fine enough for the most part, and fixing audio and other bugs is probably the priority, as you say. And so they're trying to get to release and they're trying to do other things, and I get that. That's fine. That's fine. But it would be nice. It would be nice to have that proper system, because it does feel like just a hack at the moment. And for it's probably one of, like, because some of the other stuff like audio I can kind of forgive them for because it's just tricky, right? Whereas like this is part of the milsimi realistic dream the battle state has. This is supposed to be like their jam, right? And that's why this in particular, I'm like, guys, you have to kind of fix this, because it's part of like what I see them as being experts at. Not necessarily audio coding or like networking coding, right? That's just like, it is what it is, but it's tough. But putting in a correct zeroing system is something that should be well within their wheelhouse. And I think that's why it kind of irks me that it's not been done.
Well, yeah. I think designing it to have all the things that interconnect function is probably the most difficult part, because there's a lot of things going on. But to give credit where credit's due, no one asks for the ballistic rework, I guess you could say. They sort of like improved the system, and that was of their own doing. And it is kind of very BSG in that, you know, if it relates to firearms or you know, things of that nature, it's like, we're gonna do it. You know, like no one asked for the ability to load in an individual round into your gun. You know, when they did all the animations for that for all the guns, you know, and it's just like, this has absolutely zero use, but here you go, here's the feature, you know. But it's like, that's what they're passionate about. You know, they really like their firearms and whatnot. So, yeah, I don't know. I say all that to say that I don't want to give them too much crap. You know, I'm very critical of them because it's just high expectations. Because the gaming industry is just so, there's a lot to expect nowadays, and yeah, it's tough. It's tough. But...
It is tough. It is tough. Did you know though? Because you were talking about shooting at sniper scav with a 25-meter range scope. I just had a quick flick through. Did you know that the makeshift 50 BMG slug is a red tracer? I did not. I've only just learnt this right this minute. So you can see where the rounds are going. because you don't need to guess.
Yeah, I don't ever recall because I have used
I've
that.
never used that
I
one.
want to
I've
say,
never
oh
used it.
really? Because I want to
It's
say what
baby AP20s,
happens.
right?
Yeah, and you can I think you could get them off the flea, or maybe you can't. But because that was the thing, I was like, I'm gonna use AP20s. I can't get them. I'm gonna get the I'll buy the 50 BMGs. Maybe you couldn't. I might be wrong about that. I know I had a bunch of found and raid because I know like every wipe I need to save good shotgun ammo for the shotgun quests. You know, the various
Looks like you
ones.
can
But
buy it on the flea.
okay. Well, what I was gonna say was I want to say that the recoil is so high that you don't end up getting to see the tracer. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm making stuff up. So
I don't know. I do love its description though. 1270 custom made slug shell with a shortened 50 BMG tracer bullet. No one knows who and why is producing these strange slugs in Tarkov, but they just work somehow. Good piece of flavor text there.
yeah.
So yeah, man, it's been a wild ride looking through
Hmm.
these. Um, it's just like adding that zeroing component makes the whole conversation just so much more troublesome. And
Yeah.
like, well, I want to use a really speedy round, but that makes the zeroing problem worse. And so actually, I'm going to use this worse round. It's worse in almost every area, except because it's slower. By virtue of that, it just somehow magically lines up with the zeroing system and means that I can actually
Hmm.
hit my shots. It's just like kind of yeah, it's just kind of funky. Kind of funky, but I'm going to do some more research on it and see if there's actually some legs on it. I'm going to try and use some of them as well and see if I can three tap people in the legs from 100 meters onwards with a shotty with a Valde on it or something. I don't know. We will see. We will see.
So, a couple things I want to get off my chest since there's kind of a lot to talk about, like sort of like Scav Talk and the podcast in general, in a way. As you know, me and Giga, we've been doing this for like what, coming up on 2 years now? In October, I
Ah,
think.
probably, yeah.
Oh,
That's
wild to
kind of
think
crazy.
about. I know, dude. It's crazy, man. Like honestly, having Jesse on the other day, it was like such a weird moment because it was like surreal, but also it's like I feel like I'm talking to a friend, but he's not my friend. I just watch a lot of his content, so I feel like I know him. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh, it was so weird. It was so weird.
Yeah, the parasocial relationship is really strange because you feel it's, I think especially if you watch someone else's, not just their content, but you also watch like a podcast with them talking like more casually as well, like
Mm-hmm.
with the podcast with Veritas as well. You get like a really good idea of who this person is because we listen through 100 episodes of the podcast or something, right? So it's like you spent like 200 hours listening to someone else converse and all of the content that they make. So you kind of know their likes and dislikes, like what they like to talk about, the way that they handle themselves. So when you speak to them, you kind of already know what to expect. It's kind of strange. It is kind of strange.
Yeah, but it was super cool to have Jesse on. I mean, I loved it. Like I can't, we went for 3 hours. It was great. I haven't even got to finish listening to it yet. Um, like I usually re-listen to it. I say re-listen to it, listen to it again because it's like I get to like absorb more. Doing a live show versus doing a recording is just so much more different, dude. Because in the recording, you get to like cut the stuff you don't like and keep the stuff you do like.
Hmm.
And the live show is just live, and there is a bit of a magic to that as well. But yeah, so I was like realizing I was like, dang, I missed that. That was like a truth bomb Jesse just dropped. Because sometimes you're at least for me, I don't know how you operate, Giga, but I'm like either listening what you're saying or like I'm formulating something that I want to talk about off something you said. And sometimes like things can go on and I'll have like, three things I want to like talk about, and then I just like crap. What do I do now? I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Or like it's moved on too far, and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
how do
it's
I
like
like,
yeah,
how do you like seamlessly loop it back? Like it's not, yeah, it's not
yeah,
easy. It's not
yeah.
easy.
So there is one thing on that note now that I want to get off my chest about RFT discussion, and I'm sorry if I come off as like a negative hater towards BSG. I hope that's not like the vibe. I'm kind of like self conscious about that if I'm being honest, but I don't know what it is. I don't know, but
You mean
there
about
was
like RMT, like the RMT update, or more generally?
just in general, you know. I'm a critical person, and that's mostly aimed at towards myself, but it also, you know, because I'm so critical, it can often like branch towards myself. I can like branch that out to like other people, you know, and it's like kind of, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird. So I try to like keep that in check, you know what I mean? A bit.
I think that's okay. I mean, it's fine to be critical. I think as long as it's
Right.
backed up and constructive, whatever. You clearly enjoy the
Yes.
game enough to run a podcast every week about it. So I don't think there's any, as long as it's not unfounded, then I think it's fine. I think you're always fairly reasonable in your criticism, as far as I'm concerned. So
Yeah. I just yeah, I don't know. It's just like I it can be a difficult thing to navigate because I want to like challenge people and their ideas because I also want to learn more about it. Like I'm the type of person like if you're talking about something, explain something like, oh yeah, DCPC is, you know, this amazing thing. Just cut. I'll be like, I'll interrupt you and be like, what's DCP? You know, I don't know what that is. You know what I mean? And it's just because I want to know more. You know, right? So I remember seeing Tobias's tweet about he used the analogy of locking the doors and how it like applies to RMT. And I agree with the principle in that any one change that you do, whether it's in a game, whether it's you know real life, making laws, whatever, like there's pros and cons. Like there's a cost to it. You know, it's going to affect everyone basically. You know, there's going to be innocent bystanders, so to speak. At least that's kind of how I see it, right? So, you know, in the analogy he used, he was like, you know, this is like, and I may be butchering this, but the analogy he's using to RMT, he was like, this is going to be like a lock on a door where, you know, we're trying to prevent thieves from breaking in. So, yes, it's an inconvenience to everyone because now everyone has to lock the door and unlock the door or whatever. And I didn't like that analogy because I agree with the overall what he's saying. But I feel for me, this RMT change is not them putting a lock on the door because you would be able to unlock the door, right? AKA doing the trade. This is like a brick and mortar store saying, okay, there's people breaking in through our door. We're gonna wall off the door and only have online shopping. It's like that's the only way you can do. We're gonna do this, and it's like, what? No, I like going in the door and experiencing the brick and mortar experience. You know, but it's like, no, you could just go online, you know, and just do it online. I don't know. It's just like that part. I wanted to bring it up yesterday in our podcast, but I didn't want to like, you know, again, hey guys, can we go back like 5 pages and talk about this one thing that I wanted to do? So.
yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. I mean, I don't. I mean, like if isn't walling the door off though, isn't that the same thing as basically being like, we're going to delete all the loot off the map or whatever. It's like changing the fundamental because the game fundamentally doesn't change that much. I mean, it doesn't for me, but helping. It's a few cases of helping other people out, and in cases where you wouldn't be going to raid with them as well at the same time. There's some find and raid cases where someone dies and another person doesn't die. There's certain scenarios where it changes it, but fundamentally, I personally don't believe that the game structure has really been changed that much. It's more like people are getting stuff stolen out of the window, so they've locked the window closed, so it's a little bit hot and everyone's a little uncomfortable. But the door's still open at the front, and everyone can still come in.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the fundamental part has changed because how I see it is that it's literally impossible for me to, if I take something, like it's fine if I'm in the raid and I found something, but as soon as I take it out of the raid, I can no longer trade with anybody. You know, so it's like they've fundamentally anything from going to your stash to a raid, you can no longer trade. Like that's just gone. So it's like
For loot items, yes.
Yes.
For the barter items, yeah. So
Yes.
like weapons and gear, still you can still do that. It's just like valuable things and barter items that you can't trade those with other people. But I mean, how often were you trading those with other people outside of the early wipe for hideout and that kind of thing?
But
Once
that's
you get to the flea, it's kind of the moot point, right?
Yes, as it stands now. But that's where I'm just like grim because I just feel as though there's never gonna be open world's a crapshoot. Like it's just never gonna happen. Any remote thing of it because I just don't see how they could why would you put something in that you would later remove? You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make it doesn't make any sense. Why do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I don't understand about this change, right, is that is that they've said, oh, we don't really want people playing solo. You're supposed to be playing with a squad.
Hmm.
That's kind of the only way that it would make sense. The only way to square that circle and to fix it would to be somehow, being kind of like, well, it doesn't fix RMT. The RMT is still a problem, but maybe so that you have to join, like you can only join one group or something, and then you're locked in for 30 days before you can like change your group or whatever. And within that group, you can circulate stuff if you've got like a shared hideout, like some kind of clan system or whatever. I can't remember if they're still actually intending to do that or not, but that was the only way that I could think about it. So it's like, yeah, then you could help people who are still in your clan group, but you couldn't help anybody else outside of that system, which would fix all the problems of people with their buddies, as long as you're all within the same clan system. But then would still deal with RMT because they wouldn't be able to swap and change groups every 5 seconds.
Hmm.
You'd be stuck for a month or whatever. I mean, maybe you just make another account and then clan that up, but whatever. Like, there's always ways around these things. But that's the only thing that doesn't really make sense to me is that it's like, oh, this change doesn't affect solos at all in any way, and it makes playing with squads worse than it was previously, especially at the beginning,
Hmm.
and especially for progression. And you're supposed to be working together and helping each other out. And with PMC Karma, you're supposed to be working together and helping other people out. So maybe in the future, it would have been good to bring in a Bitcoin to trade with someone else who's found something that you want, blah, 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 but now you can't do that anymore. It's like, it seems to have more future plans on teamwork and cooperation than it does now. I do agree with you that it's more of an effect in the future than it is right this minute,
Yeah.
and it kind of casts a shadow on all of the future plans
Hmm.
for the way that they have said they want the game to go. I do agree with that. Yeah, I do, but I guess they'll just have to keep it in mind when they build up those features, and whether there's, as I said, some carve outs that they can make, or we just have to see what it looks like at 1.0. I mean, they could roll some of these things back, but again, I agree with you. It's not really the BSG way. Usually, the band aid goes on and then it stays on forever and then never comes
Yeah.
off, which is kind of a shame, even when the underlying problems are resolved. So
Hmm.
these things get put in place, and then they just, that's it. This is the way it is now. That's how it is. So we'll see. They could change. Maybe, I don't know. Depends how it goes after release and what the problems they think are there, and whether it's detrimental to their overall worldview of the way it should be. Maybe when things are more hardcore, then no, maybe none of this will matter. Maybe everything will be fine in raid. So who knows?
Yeah. It's who knows, man. I have to wait and see. It's just that's time will always tell. You know, time will
Yep.
always tell. I was gonna go somewhere else with this, but the other thing wanted to jump back to was talking about the podcast and yeah, it's been a while, almost 2 years now, and here soon we're probably gonna be looking into monetizing the podcast a bit more. Like essentially, what it means is you may get an ad on the audio version if you listen on the audio version, and it'll probably most likely be a readout from I or Giga. Like the one that I sent to Giga that we got sponsored for was like promote Anchor, and it's like, I mean, I could do the readout right now, but anyways, it's literally just telling you about the program. But anyway, something to make this to help, I guess, grow the potential of what this could become. And same for YouTube. Like right now, you're probably getting ads. I don't know how that works. My understanding is that even if your channel's not set up for monetization, like YouTube Partner Program, they can still run ads on your video. So ideally, you won't get any more ads. You'll get the same amount of ads, except we'll be getting a portion of that being a partner on YouTube. So a lot of cool things coming. I want to like improve the production side. I was telling Giga about some things, and I got some ideas. I've been watching and learning from a couple of different other podcasts, and yeah, we'll see. I'm excited for the future, but I have to say, just to be, it's still to this day crazy that people listen to it. Like, God, you would never believe the first version. Have I told you this story? The first beta version of the podcast I wanted to do, Gig. Have I told you this?
I think you have. Is this this is not Tarkov related, right? This is something else.
Well, I guess you could call it the alpha. Yeah, so I'll be brief. We had some two friends, and we often talked a lot of like current events, political stuff, and I always enjoyed it, even though it was kind of a shenanigans. But I just thought it would be cool to have it online, and other people maybe could get something out of it and enjoy it. And they were like, "Absolutely not! What the heck were you thinking?" I was like, "Okay." And then Tarkov came around, and I was like, man, this game is like would be a really good podcast to talk about. And so I could like coerce my buddy into doing an episode with me, and it was really cringe. It was like the Epic Gamer Show, and I just like embraced the cringe. It was literally like a joy emoji guy for the logo. Like it was giga cringe, GigaBeef. And I was like, okay, all right, this isn't really, he didn't want to be a part of it. And I could understand, the joy emoji might have been a little much, but so yeah, that's funny, dude.
That's hilarious. That is genuinely hilarious. It's a funny one. It's a funny one. I mean, it's been a great time. I always enjoy coming on and just talking because it's kind of hard to get that same I guess creative outlet in other avenues because streaming is trying to juggle lots of things normally because you're trying to play the game and like think of something interesting to do and then also speak to chat as well at the same time. So you're kind of like cutting and changing from lots of different things. And the number of times that you lose your trail of thought if you're trying to speak to chat, but then something happens in game and you're trying to explain something or answer a question or whatever. And then the YouTube format is very kind of it's its own thing as well. So I mean, for me, it's been a joy. It's been a joy to do it, and I guess thank you for putting up with all the various. I can only do this very specific window, like 1 hour in this 1 week that I can do it for, and all that stuff, and for doing all the back end because it's been super, dude. It's been super. So onwards and upwards from here, guys. And thanks for everyone for listening. It's been awesome. It's been awesome, and I love it. So,
Did you have
with
anything
all
else?
that out of the way,
I could jump to something if you want.
No. I'm good. I'm good. Feel free. Jump in.
Okay.
Jump in.
Let's talk about Tarkov matchmaking, dude. So I have a theory, and it's kind of a grim theory. But I see it all the time. Like I was just watching Airwing stream, like I was just basically flipping the channel, and someone in chat was talking about solo only or ranked matchmaking and things like this, and part of me wonders that perhaps a reason people like the current system is because how do I say this? Hmm.
By the current system, you mean the loading in, the spawn points, like that whole setup?
No. So let me specify by matchmaking. How the
Oh,
game
it's in like no
determines
MMR.
yes, how the game determines lobbies, right? And as far as we know, it's random, but I mean, if you've heard of Cycle Frontier and then sort of keep up with their news, they have a system where they match people up based off the value of the items they're extracting the raid with. And I think that's it. It's not a survival rate. It's literally just the average value of the items you're coming out with, which is interesting because, as they put it, you get various different types of skills and playstyles. Because I mean, you could say it's skill based matchmaking, and the skill is how efficient are you at getting out with min maxing your slots, essentially, right? Getting out the most loot. But you could have various playstyles. You could have the guy that's like chasing PvP, the guy that's moving crab walking everywhere, whatever. You get all types of playstyles, which I think is pretty interesting. But I say all to say, as far as we know, Tarkov doesn't have any type of matchmaking. It's just whatever fills up first. And there's questions to me around Arena, and that are they going to have skill based matchmaking? Because I would, me personally, I would actually kind of prefer that. Like that would make me more interested in Arena. So you could really
Yeah.
like test your skill and sort of have something to grind for. Like I honestly, I'm not a big fan of Arena. Like it's not, or let me say it like this. It's not what gets me excited about Tarkov. What gets me excited about Tarkov is Tarkov becoming more and more like Rust or Daisy. And I don't mean like carbon copy. I mean like that experience
Yeah.
that's what I crave. And if they, maybe they can't get it, should, I don't think it should be the goal, but I just feel like I've never played when you tell me first person shooter game, I instantly think of like Counter-Strike. And that was like my limited understanding of what you could experience. So if it's like, Call of Duty, it's basically Counter-Strike. You know, battle royales were kind of like a change to that, but it's still the basic thing, right? You shoot the player, you win the game. Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas Rust and DayZ is like, no, it's a first person survival game. Like, yes, there's guns. Like, there's more to first person games than guns. You know what I mean? And that sort of like really opened my eyes when I played Rust and DayZ, is because like you can actually do more than just shoot people, and have these like really cool experiences with other players. It's really unique. I don't know. It's such a weird, and I really like that. So having more of that in the Tarkov, I'm all game for you. But backpedaling a bit, backtracking. For me, Arena would be interesting if they had skill based matchmaking, because then you could sort of get back into that classic FPS grind as I see fit. Now, when it comes to the main game Tarkov and matchmaking, the grim thought I have is, do people like it not being matchmaking? Because when you play skill based matchmaking, you're constantly challenging, your skills are put to test constantly.
Yeah.
If you're hard stuck at a certain MMR, as they say, it's just like you are your own control of your destiny, whereas like Tarkov's random matchmaking, supposedly, again, we don't know, it's sort of like, did the lobby go in your favor based off, like, if you're an average player, if you're above average player, you're gonna naturally survive more raids if it's all random, right? Like that would just make sense to me. Whereas if you're a below average player, you're really gonna struggle. Now it's like the same as can be said for skill based matchmaking, right? If you're a below average player, you're gonna be matched up with below average players, so you're still gonna have a hard time, because your skills are gonna constantly be put to the test. But at least they're putting the test with equally skilled opponents. You know what I mean? It's not like I have the chance of going against Shroud. I don't know. I say out that just an interesting thought I had, in that I wonder if my attempt at mental telepathy here is, I wonder if people consciously or unconsciously like not having skill based matchmaking, because I can say the same for Rocket League. And I don't play ranked. I don't play Rocket League to grind out and get really good and master the mechanics and hit all these crazy shots. I just play to chase the ball. I'm literally a dog in that game. I just chase the ball. So, interesting thought I have. Curious what your take is.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't see a way of adding arena in a sensible way that doesn't include matchmaking personally. Like maybe
Mhm.
you could play like an unranked version in there where it just throws you in against anybody because it's a quick play or something. So you just fast
Yeah, sure.
aims, whatever. But I think any serious mode within arena is going to have to be ranked in some sense. I don't know exactly how, but you would imagine a classic MMR type system where you get thrown in, and when you win, you go up points. When you lose, you go down points. Just usual ELO style
Mhm.
of points, and then with leaderboards or whatever. Because otherwise, what's the point? I mean, that's the whole point of arena, is to test people's skills. Now, main Tarkov obviously doesn't have that, which is interesting. For me, there's actually pros and cons to both. So I think in a
Yeah.
competitive setting, it definitely makes sense to do it with arena. But I've always had a kind of mixed opinion
Mm.
on on both settings, and you kind of somehow want to do both because one of the problems that I've always felt with super competitive games, and Dota 2 is kind of like this for me in some ways when I was playing it seriously, which was a long time ago now, it was like years ago now. But the problem that I had with that was that because the skill-based matchmaking is so strong and so tight, and you're always playing against people who are the same level as you, it's actually hard to learn from because the times when you learn, right? So when I used to play real-time strategy, there weren't as many people playing.
Mm-hmm.
And so typically you'd play against a much wider band of opponents, right? And when you played against those people in the upper brackets, you'd fight your absolute hardest. But basically, so mistakes that you would make against lower tier players in your skill bracket that would go unpunished would be punished by the higher tier players. And that in turn, if you're consciously trying to improve, that will actually drive you to be a better player, better than playing against your own players. Player skill bracket. Whereas I found in Dota 2, because I was playing against people of the same skill bracket over and over again, I personally found that harder to improve because I wasn't having the areas of the game where I was sucking uncovered properly by people who were better than me, right? Like playing if you're 2K, playing against like stacks of 3K players is like by far the best way. You don't want them to be like 5K. You don't want people to be
Yeah.
like so high above you that you just get crushed no matter what you do. But what you want is you want somebody who's decently enough higher rank than you that they can teach you things just by like punishing you when you do stuff wrong,
Right.
but still giving you the chance to breathe and not just completely like smother you, right? That's how you like slowly climb up the ladder. And I found that some of my progress was a bit smothered by that. The fact that you're 2.5K or whatever, and you go in and everyone's like 2,420, 2,470, like 2,541, and like you're all just the same. You're all doing the same things. It's really tough. Whereas again, like back playing Counter Strike, and that's CS Source, before they had matchmaking at all, you just joined random servers and you'd be playing with anybody. And in that, you get taught by the really good players where not to peak. And if you're in a mixed lobby, and Tarkov can be like that too, right? Where you've got some players who are on average lower skilled, some players who are higher skilled, and you'll kill the lower skilled players. And the higher skilled players, when you meet them, you'll be doing a thing and then you'll just die and you're like, okay, well, I shouldn't do that again. And those moments are much more teachable. So if you want to improve, you actually, I don't know. I think I would rather take the no matchmaking because you still have the chance of coming up against the people who are really good who'll teach you something, even though half the time you are going to kick somebody else who's lower, but you'll teach them a lesson, I suppose. But the issue is the higher you get and the more skilled you get, actually the less that you learn because you're just playing against people below you all the time. And that's the reason why people really love going to labs, right? Because it was only the top level PvP chads who actually
Yeah.
went and they're playing against each other and they're all improving, which is the reason why they'll like inertia. So I don't know. I actually think it's kind of mixed. It is sort of mixed. Maybe matchmaking with a wide band is not the worst thing because then at least people are sort of within your your realm of possibility, right? If you're matching somebody
Right.
who's never played the game before against some dude with like 10 wipes and plays the game every day and is level 60, there's just no point having that matchup. So maybe a wide band matchmaking is some kind of sweet spot where you're still playing against people who are
Mm-hmm.
better than you. But for me, that's it. I mean, I don't know. I imagine a lot of people who do play Tarkov, and especially people who've played them for more than one wipe, do have to do some self-reflection, do have to do some personal progression thinking, critical analysis of what they're doing, purposeful practice to try to get better, because otherwise you just die all the time. And those people who don't want to do that kind of thing typically go and play other games where you don't need to do that, and I guess you just get put in your bracket and you play against other people. It depends whether whether you're gaming to chill out or not. I mean,
Yeah.
like many people in the community, I play because it's a challenge and it's exciting. Not everybody needs that all the time. Not everybody wants that all the time. Some people don't
Yeah.
want it ever. So it just depends on what kind of player you are. So that's my view. I think Arena should definitely have it. Maybe a mode where it doesn't, just for speeding up matchmaking. And I think that regular Tarkov is actually okay without it. And if it was to be put into place, then it would be a wideband version instead for me. That's just me personally.
No, I like that because when you were talking about the issues of playing in these, extremely high variance games in terms of like ELO, MMR, skill level, you end up like we used to do a lot like in houses. I ran like help run like an in-house Dota in-house thing, which was a lot of fun, but a lot lasting ways. And we would have like, sometimes we'd have like really high variance like teams. Like we would try to balance them out, but you may have like one 5K guy and a bunch of 2Ks, and then like a bunch of 3Ks on the other team, right? So you have like this one like guy that's playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing 2D chess, and like I can't even comprehend 4D chess because I haven't mastered 2D chess and 3D chess yet. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
like so far ahead. What he's doing doesn't even like make sense. I haven't. So it's like, yeah, for sure, you don't want them to be too far ahead, but at the same time, as you said as well, when everyone's the exact same skill level, you're not really learning anything new. Like it can get really weird where like certain metas within these like skill brackets break out where it's like
Oh
a
yeah,
certain
yeah.
like in Dota 2, like a certain hero, like a certain strategy will be like it will work in that skill bracket, and then as you move up, it will stop working because it only works in that like very niche skill bracket. Like such a weird thing, dude. It's so weird.
Yeah, that's really cool actually, because we definitely see that because none of us are super good. I mean, I play really casually every now and then when my friends are on. Right? I probably play. It's one of those things where I won't play for 2 weeks, and then I'll
Hmm.
play like every night for 3 days, like maybe 2 or 3 games or something, or like 2 games, and then won't play again for like 3 weeks. It's just like really like on off casual. But it's one of those funny things. I think one of the sayings with our group is invincibility is invulnerability, and we are actually past that now. But like it's just like something that's stuck with us from back in the day, where it's just like
Yeah,
invisible heroes. Like when you first start playing the game, it's just invisible
yeah,
heroes. You just because you have to bring specific items
right.
to show them, then it's just back, the low skill
Yep.
brackets. Invisibility is invincibility because there's just nothing anybody can do about it because everyone's trying so hard to see what all the items do and all their skills and stuff. Everyone forgets to
Yeah.
bring the right things, and if they do bring the right things to see the people, they don't use them at the right time, and like it's just yeah. So I definitely appreciate that, and it's quite funny because I mean Dota 2 is an interesting game in that it's fiendishly complicated as well.
Hmm.
One of the reasons why I quite like it, but it's balanced for professional play.
Right.
And so you then get these like imbalances lower down the skill bracket where things are like totally out of kilter, but only because people don't know how to use the counters right. So if like at the pro level, if a counter is very complicated but is feasible, then that's okay. But down at the bottom tier, that hero is not really an option because no one can play them. And so then the I guess the problem in this situation then just becomes a real issue and just like stampedes all over everyone's games. So it's
Hmm.
kind of it's quite funny really.
Yeah.
It definitely happens like that. I get like Tarkov and those kind of games are less. I guess they're less complex in that respect, in many ways, because you
Yeah,
don't
that's
quite have that sort of interplay of like skills and abilities and all that stuff.
right.
It's less difficult and less problematic in that sense. But I wonder if that does exist in some way.
I was trying to think like what's the equivalent of Shadowblade or Ricky in in Tarkov. Like, I was thinking like maybe bringing armor, but I feel like everyone would bring armor. I think something that's like really not obvious. Maybe like, I don't know, crafting your hideout or knowing
I
that there's a
guess.
Tark.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. I got it. The Tarkov ballistic sheet. just
I was gonna
just
say
learn the
that.
ballistic sheet.
Yeah, not knowing the ballistic sheet, and then everybody's had that experience where they come to Reddit or Twitter or whatever and be like,
Hmm.
"I shot the guy 25 times and he didn't die.
Right.
This game's bullshit." And that happens to everybody, right? It happens to everyone. It happened to me on my first wipe trying to do Punisher 4, and because I'd finished Punisher 3 and I died loads of times because it was still 50 scavs when I did Punisher 3. I died a bunch and I had loads of AK-74U, so I was like, well, I'll take these off to resort. So we went off to resort with the AK-74U with God knows what ammo. I don't even remember at this point. And yeah, the guy took like 18 hits on the stairwell, and then I died, and I said, "This sucks." And then I didn't do Punisher again until my second wipe, which is quite funny. So yeah, that's definitely one big hurdle. It's like once you have one of those moments, you go, through the 5 stages of grief or whatever, and you're just like, this sucks. This is not my fault. I hate the game. This is rubbish. Maybe it was me. Okay, what can I do about this? Oh, the ballistics chart exists. Oh goodness. Oh, there's the whole armor. Oh these rounds don't do any damage to that. Huh, interesting. Okay, so what can I use? And then it's that
Right.
whole process of like, you get punished, and then you heal and you develop, and then you move forwards, and you've broken through that first barrier where you stop buying really cheap rounds because you're like, but the ruble count, and then
Hmm.
realize that it's the most important thing ever. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a funny one.
Yeah.
Where do we even start with that? I'm not even sure how we began. Oh, matchmaking. We're talking about
Tarkov
matchmaking.
matchmaking.
Yeah, we were talking about matchmaking. So yeah, I mean, look, I think the matchmaking is fine to have it unmatch made in regular
Hmm.
Tarkov. I think it's okay. I mean, it helps with queues as well. But
Yeah,
parts of Tarkov, as we've
that's
said
a
before, yeah,
big
it
pro.
helps with queues, and it's supposed to be unpredictable. So sometimes you just meet, Chad Megazord 69,
Hmm.
these nuts, meta mutant with a whatever and BP in it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens, and then you suck and you die, and
Hmm.
that's it. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens with the arena matchmaking modes and whether there's seasonal ladders and that kind of thing. Because
Yeah.
it'd be cool. It'd be
I
cool.
hope they do. I hope they do a bit of both ranked and casual, because definitely in my later years in life, I enjoy just like sometimes I just want to like chill out and just turn off my brain and hold mouse one, you know what I mean, or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good.
um
It's good. It's good. Yeah. Did you have anything else specific you wanted to mention?
yeah, just really
That's-
briefly. I recently took on a new client, Rock Mom, which I'm really excited for. I didn't really know exactly what I was getting into, but then when I saw the footage and watched the stream, I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting into now. I sort of had like an idea, and then that was kind of just blown out of my expectations were blown. So I'm really excited. We're working on a video, of course, but we're working on strategy to get her to partnered on YouTube as quick as possible. And yeah, I'm really excited about everything and editing, and it's a lot of fun. I also found an editing podcast, which is really cool. I can't remember the name, unfortunately. I have to look it up, but
Oh, that is
I'll
interesting. Yeah,
look it up
I
here
meant
on the
to ask you
side.
about this, and yeah, I guess now's the time as good as any because you threw it in on that intro, and then by the time we got to the end of the cast, like I've forgotten and I'm moving on to the next thing, and then I forget until the next week. Um, so yeah, it's good. It's good. I mean, you got time amongst all the other stuff you're doing, or
Say it again.
how do you find the time?
Well, right now it seems to be okay because we're Tarkov's in the lull, so I guess we'll find out when White Pips. I mean, the thing is with Rock Mom is we're doing. We don't really know what we're doing, and that's what's interesting about the partnership, because we're in that sort of like she's just starting out, right? And she's trying to figure out her content for YouTube, because stream content, YouTube content is kind of a different thing. You can take stream content and make it into YouTube content, but there's just certain variables, in my opinion, that need to be there. Um, like it helps if you're a really big name like Landmark, you can just put stream clips up and people want to see Landmark, shoot at things, right?
Yeah,
So for those people that don't have that power, that presence behind them, that there's different things you could do. So we're trying to figure that out. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be some really unique content to Tarkov. I think and hope, and yeah, I can't wait to see what comes of it. I got high hopes for what's going on there.
is this gonna be churches branching out of editing into like YouTube strategy consultant? Is this it? Is this the beginning of a new broader career?
Possibly. I don't know. It's interesting because I don't want to go in too much detail, but me and Erwin kind of have like a unique partnership, and in that I have like a vested interest in his success. So I really like that strategy because it like I get enjoyment from helping people, like satisfaction,
Mhm.
and so I can sort of leverage that to what I like doing as far as editing, and it's just a win-win. It incentivizes me to make good videos, make my edits, learn more, because I get a direct, um, I get compensated for that. So it's like, yeah. So that's kind of the thing that I fell into that I'm really liking, because we did try a couple different work for hire payment methods, and what we land on seems to be working good so far, and we'll see how that goes and changes need be. But yeah, it's definitely I am kind of like digging the whole YouTube strategy style because it's crazy, man. I'm constantly like me and Airwing, if we get talking about YouTube, oh my god, dude, it's just crazy. And like I feel like listening to Mr. Beast and talking to some of his podcasts, I'm just like, I'm not obsessive enough. I'm not obsessive enough. I need to watch more YouTube and be like Mr. Beast. It's just yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's a interesting thing. I think as an editor, it's kind of one of those like you've tried doing some of your own stuff, and
Hmm.
I think like mainly it's like doing your own things is mostly just about like ideas and like having enough stuff that you actually just like want to work on. And so doing a bit of that, and you got experience there, then going into doing editing for Airing, where I guess someone else is doing the ideas, but then you're doing like the implementation side. So it's
Hmm.
like okay, you can just focus on that and not worry about like coming up with like new stuff. You're just like okay, well, just like how do we implement this? It's kind of good in its own right, and it's funny because as editor you have a lot of power actually because it's like it's a big portion of how these things perform, right? The ideas can be
Yeah.
great, but if it's not edited with impact, then it just won't function because it's a video at the end of the day and people need to either be entertained or learning or something. They don't want to be bored and people will click off if they are. So it's a huge percentage of what goes on there. And so I think like maybe doing that then has taught you all of it. And it's like once you start pulling at the thread, right? You're just like, oh well, how do I make my edits better? Well, then you need to learn about all sorts of other things. And it's kind of like you end up just accidentally becoming the YouTube strategy person anyway, because you
Right.
need to know all that
A
to actually do the
bit.
editing well, right? Like if you, and this is always the issue that I've had in terms of like thinking. I'm still not really in the right place for it. And I don't really want to at the moment, but like thinking about the process of getting editors and this kind of thing, and it's like you don't, as a YouTuber, you don't want an editor that just edits videos. You want an editor that understands the YouTube platform and knows how to edit
Right.
for YouTube. That's what you want. And the
Right.
person could be like cracked at video editing, right?
Right.
But if they're like a filmmaker type editor, that's not necessarily what you need, right? Even if they're really good,
Hmm.
because there's specific things that need to happen on this platform. It's like it's really weird. It's really
Yep.
weird. So yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a fun ride, especially I think working with somebody and building up their channel from scratch as well. It's like actually amazing experience to go through that with somebody when it's not your content as well, because you can actually take a proper step back and be like, this is good, this is bad, change this, don't do this, you did this and I don't like it, we're going to change this, we're going to try this time. I've seen this work elsewhere, let's do that. Because when you're the one person doing it, it's like anything, right? If you're writing a book and then you get someone to proofread it and they say, oh well, maybe you should do this and change this part here, because you're so close to it that you don't see the mistakes you're making or whatever. Whereas like being one step back, you've got that opportunity to do that in a way you could be more I guess consistently critical as opposed to inconsistent, because people are critical of their own work, sure, but maybe focus on the wrong things. They're like hyper focused on this one particular piece, whereas this whole section is just like missing, but they think it's fine. But I mean, yeah, it's just like I've talked to people about various things, and people are like, "Why do you do this?" And I'm just like, "Very good question. It's because I've done it for 2 years, and that's just the way thing. That's just the way I've always done this." And they're like, "Yeah, you should change that." And I'm just like, "Yeah, I probably should." And it's just like even little conversations like that, it just makes a big difference. So yeah, I wish you the best of luck with it. It's great. You just have to keep
Hmm.
all of us up to date and entertained on what's going on with that. I'll watch out the channel. Have you done anything on the channel specifically yet? Have you actually like
No.
edited anything for the channel? Okay.
I mean, I'm
'Cause-
working on a project and I've put
Sure.
a lot of time to it, but I want it to be really successful. We got a strategy, and yeah, it's. I feel like there's a big gap in the Tarkov content creation space, like a lot of opportunity. Um, and I don't know why that is, but yeah, I don't know. It's just a weird space, man. It's not like any other gaming space, but so I'm excited to see what we can do there. And yeah, the podcast I wanted to shout out that I mentioned earlier, the editing podcast, is the Cutting Corner podcast. For
Mm.
any editors out there, or if you want to make your own YouTube videos, might be of some use to you. So the first guest they had on, I've only listened to one episode. I've only made it like halfway through because I constantly have to like pause, go look up what they're saying and watch it or learn about it. There's so much like value in that podcast. It's insane, at least for me. But one of the guys I had on is an editor for Jack Spice Spidey C Spice Jack whatever. And
Jacksepticeye.
Jacksepticeye, thank you. And what's the other guy? Corpse Husband. I don't know if
Mm.
you've heard that name. And he talked about his most proud YouTube video, and I went and looked it up, and it has 30 million views. Just like, God, that's insane, dude. And yeah, it's been like, so I saw that, I'm like, okay, I need to watch every frame by frame analysis engage, you know? I'm just like trying to soak it all in. It's great, dude. It's great. So
That's interesting. I'll have to look it up as well because I'm always looking for more of these kind of things, given that I still do everything myself and I'm slowly improving. You know, it's, with me and Church were talking about this just before the cast started. You know, the low time in Tarkov when BSG does an event and drives half the player base away, and then we just sit at a nice low level, and everyone's just kind of chilling, waiting for the new content to arrive. It's a perfect time to take a step back, to reevaluate what you're doing, you know, learn some new skills, that kind of thing. I mean, that's what I've been doing anyway, trying to go out of the comfort zone with different types of edits, different styles of video, and just having a go. You know, just having a go. That's what it's all about. So I'm still looking up new things, and yeah, the number of times even now, like, I think again, it's the same as with everything. I actually like what you said about every 5 seconds you have to pause and go and look up something. And there's been so many different things that I've done throughout my life that I've learned that's exactly that. Where you go, I want to do. I mean, poker's a really good example actually, because I knew nothing about that game at all, and I played one game at university with some friends, and I was like, I don't know anything about this game, but I'm going to learn it. And from that moment, it was like, okay, I'm just going to like consume the stuff and read the things. And you read, like, you go on the, you know, a forum post and someone's like, start like, there's just buzzwords from literally like the second word. And you're like,
yeah,
oh God. And you just start looking stuff up and you're like, what does
right.
this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And sometimes even in the definition, you have to look up stuff in that. But then as you read more and more things over a process of, you know, a couple of weeks to a couple of months, you be able to read an entire post without having to look something up. But if that just relentless search for information, it's the same thing as with Tarkov too, right? It's like when you first come into the game, it's that relentless search for information. You read through the subreddit and you go, what does he mean by that? What does he mean by this? You know, what's a Chad? What you know, how does this function? What
right.
is, you know, fragmentation, or the, you know, going through the wiki and just like reading everything. It's the same as with really anything, and that's interesting. So I'll have a look myself, and I'll let you know what I think of it, because there's not that many there's not many resources really that are really good. There's lots of resources that are either super detailed about one individual thing, or they're too broad and
Right.
say, oh, you just need to do this, you just need to keep the viewers engaged, right? And you're just like, that's great, but where do I go from like keeping people engaged down to like creating some kind of mask that allows me to do a transparent fill around, you know? It's like this, like they're like two things. It's like, I need something in the middle here where it's, you know, how do you do this to get to that, you know, that kind of thing. So that'd be kind of interesting. Well, I'll have a listen and have a think about it. But yeah, I wish you well in your endeavors, dude. It sounds like things are picking up and you're developing and growing. Who knows? One day you're gonna follow in the footsteps of our friend who we had on that one time, Sarcastic Brit, and the next thing you know, you'll be editing for Festily, and then you'll be off editing for multi-million subscriber YouTubers or whatever. Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
But I genuinely, in all seriousness though, I do actually think that there's such a huge opportunity in general in this world. There's so many people on YouTube doing so many things. It's such a massive industry, actually, just because YouTube is so big. It's so big, and there's so many people doing stuff, and the value of even getting somebody from no channel to a small channel where they feel like they can then actually do something else. Like there's a lot of value to it, and I think a lot of people underestimate the skill of it. There's a strategy and a skill to doing these things. It's not just random luck. Sometimes it is, but there's also surefire ways of doing it, and there's people who've just slowly just ground, figured out the way to do this stuff and make it work. So yeah, it's fascinating. Best of luck. Best of luck. And you have to, and then you'll have to share the video when it's done. When your first project's done, you'll have to show us all. We'll all watch it.
Sounds good. Yeah. I just want to say that I think the harder part is, like, I don't want to take any credit away from editing, but I think the harder part is at least for me, is the creative aspect and like knowing how to make a good YouTube video and like how to have a good create that idea because that's the thing I think is there's a lot of opportunity. Like I'll just throw out some arbitrary number. I feel like 80% of the YouTube channels are just like less than 1,000 subscribers, maybe even less than that number. But I don't know. I would actually love to look at the stats on something like that. But yeah, it's I really think the hardest part is that creative side and really trying to keep someone's attention in a video, you know, so for more
Yeah.
than 5 seconds or 15 seconds. So yeah,
That's the thing that's funny about it, because you're trying to keep their attention, but you'll only keep their attention if it's high quality to that person. If it's engaging and high quality, then they'll stay. It's not like there's anything underhand going on or anything like that, right? It's like
hmm
if they're engaged, they're engaged, and if they're engaged, they're enjoying it, and that's the reason why they're staying. So it's about making something that's engaging and enjoyable. It's really as simple as that. So
yeah,
how exactly to do that is another question. But yeah, no, it's fun. It is fun. It's fun. Now, obviously, everyone wants to make things that people enjoy. You don't want to make videos that people don't enjoy, because there's no point in that. So yeah, no, it's good. It's good. There's a lot of opportunities. So definitely a lot of opportunities. I mean, yeah, as you say, there's not that many. I think also though Tarkov's a kind of a weird one. Like if you're talking about Tarkov specifically, it is a little bit strange because it is a niche game. At the end of the day, it is a niche game. So you've only got so much room, I guess.
yeah,
There's a decent amount, but I mean, you look at like the big. I mean, I'm not even sure how many subscribers Pestily has now, but you look at the
600
biggest.
and something. I looked up the other
Okay,
day.
fine. Yeah, so he's got 600 and something, and like Landmark, who I guess would be the big streamer YouTube channel, is like 324,000
hmm
subscribers. So that's kind of, the top of the field, which is really quite small for YouTube. You got
Yeah,
people who like General Sam, but they're making different types of content. So it's it's a funny one, right?
right.
It's a funny one. It's a little world all of its own. And I think we spoke with Jesse a little bit about how Rust is just like way bigger for content creation because the game lends itself to it, right? So more of Tarkov is like educational stuff, less entertainment, and the entertainment one is where you can really pull in the big numbers, because I'm not going to watch a video about something educational in Rust because I don't play the game, but I can quite easily go and watch Z-Chum's video about Rust because it's self-explanatory and is just a good story, and
Yeah,
something cool happens, right? And so that there's just a bigger pool of potential people who can come and watch the content. So it just makes sense, right? The channels are bigger, and I think that's the funny thing about Tarkov is that there's quite a few channels. I mean, lots of little channels, and there's quite a few channels between what, like 5k and 50k kind of thing, and then there's another bunch between like 50k and 100k, and then there's a couple of breakout people like Pestley and Landmark and a few others. But it's most people are either around the 100k mark or below. You don't see that many people carrying on and jumping up through the 200k. It's
hmm
it's it's a funny space. It's a niche space, but it's what you make of it.
yeah.
Yep. 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 I had one other random thing that I was going to say and mention, but it doesn't really connect to anything else. But I'm going to say it anyway.
Okay.
And it was a comment that I read somewhere around which, because I've always been super positive about like the story mode in
hmm
Tarkov, about like the 1.0 and that kind of thing. And I think it was on Twitter actually, but somebody wrote something that resonated with me, and they said, seeing how like the Lightkeeper and the events story is being portrayed so far, they said I'm actually a bit worried about the main storyline of EFT, because in my mind that was never really in question, right? It was just like, oh, the main story's going to come out and it's going to be sick. But like after reading that, I was just like, I never really considered that the main storyline would suck or be bad or not be great.
yeah.
Do we know anything about BSG storytelling? Well, not really, right? I mean, we know that they know how to make, at least to a certain level, right? Once you get up to a couple of 100 hours, a game that's extremely addictive and great gameplay and all that kind of stuff, right? Which is undoubtable, right? And unless you play through like multiple wipes, and then you know where the flaws are and all the cracks, right? You're like right up close to it. Now you can I can see the bit where the painter missed on the painting, but so many players are standing further back, and it's just Tarkov is a masterpiece in its own right, for what it does and what it's done to the gaming space, and the fact that so many people tried to copy it is a testament to that. But we don't know really anything about their storytelling. The only thing that we've seen so far is these events. And after that comment, I was like, yeah, I never really had in my mind that the storyline potentially could even not be that great. And it got me really worried. It got me really worried about like the 1.0 release of the game. And I was just like, man, if the story is not that good, then that's going to be such a like gut punch, because that's really going to be the underpinning for the whole release and the way that it feels. I don't know. I got all concerned about it. So I don't know what else to say, but just like I'd never even considered it as a possibility. I think that was the problem. And seeing the way that some of the lore and the events have been done, I think it's kind of cool the way that they've been done necessarily. But we haven't really had any story be told so far. We've got some characters. Maybe there's still more to come, but so far it just seems kind of like a bit random. We've had like the random Lightkeeper thing, but then the event hasn't actually happened. We've got these characters that are now starting to appear in a couple of different places, but there's not really been any like actual resolution for any of them, or really any development, or they haven't really done anything. It's like, oh no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hope that this doesn't happen that way.
Right. It's really hard to say one way or the other. I mean, I don't want to take what they currently have, like the trader quest, and use that as like, oh, this is what we can expect. I'll kind of like sidestep the question and just say what I really like, and that's environmental storytelling. When I do my edits, especially now, I'm trying to focus more on show not tell when it comes to like
Mhm.
story beats and whatever. If it's like, and we killed the rat that was camping in D2, and then it just cuts to the rat's dead body. You want to do that because it's a medium, the video medium. Whereas in video games, you're actively participating in the thing. You're experiencing it within the controller or whatever, and there's a feedback. So I think of like Valve games. I'll use Portal 2 for an example, or Portal rather, in that there's a story, but it's like meta because you're trying to escape. You're testing this traveling thing, and it's like clearly like level 1, level 2, it's kind of like meta, but there's a story. And as you progress the levels, you can start to see bits and pieces of the story coming. Like there's a cracked, like one of the panels is like broken, and you go in and there's like crazy scribblings on the wall, like don't trust GLaDOS and things like this. And so you're like, oh, what's going on? The facility's a fake, it's a lie. So there's like, again, it's that idea of like, you know, sh- don't tell me, show me, that have me like participate in it. So as long as they do something like this, and that's why I really like their maps, like their map design, because I feel immersed in the Tarkov universe. But if you're gonna give me, if the storyline quest is just a big long text from Prapper, I'm sorry, I'm just like not gonna read it. I'm not gonna care. I'm gonna click the thing and then see what my objectives are and do it. I'm not gonna be that engaged. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of how it is for me a bit with the lore events, is that because they're in Russian and you gotta like translate, I'm just not gonna do that stuff. I just at the end of the day want to know what the mechanic is. But if like it actually happened in game, like I just watched Prapper, he was actually in the raid and he was gone the next day. I was like, dude, what happened? And maybe there was like a Prapper, scribbled something down on this thing. You could read it in the raid, in the game or something, something like this. Yeah, cake is a lie.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that's kind of where I sit on. That's like, I'm a bit of a Valve fanboy, granted, but that's kind of like my bar for them.
The
A
problem
bit.
is Portal 1 is like a masterpiece of that kind of storytelling, right? This
Hmm.
is the issue. It's like it's its own whole skill. I remember seeing, I'm pretty sure it was Portal 1, a documentary that they made about the process of doing it, and basically having to test every room and every
Yeah.
section to slowly bootstrap players to look up and train them to do things that they need to do
Right.
later on and stuff, right? And the number of iterations they went through to actually get it into a way that the whole thing felt seamless is
Hmm.
honestly insane. It's like it's a whole different skill doing something like that, making a game like that, than it is making Tarkov as it is now. It's like it's a completely different ballpark. I mean, have you? I think I may have spoken to you about this a long time ago. Have you played Subnautica?
No.
Okay, because Subnautica has the same vibe, and
Okay.
it's that sort of I don't need the game to tell me where to go because it gives me enough clues, and I feel like I'm figuring it out myself, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. It's just immaculate game design. That's how
I see.
Subnautica feels, you know. That's much slower. That's got much more of a kind of Minecrafty survival kind of feel. I actually think that you would like Subnautica a lot
Really? Okay.
because I mean it's single player, sure, but it's also like scary as hell because
Mm.
you're under the water and like it's I don't know it's good, it's good. And I'm for the first well it's very like weaponless as well to begin with, so it's like that kind of adds to the tension because you're just like building stuff, you're just like building like modules and trying not to have everything like explode, and then
Okay.
just you don't know what like things just appear and you just don't know what they are and you have to sort of figure them out. It's good, and so it's like it's very much a feels like a nice mental logical sort of puzzle challenge to like put stuff together, and you have to figure out like well, where to go and use the clues to get there. And it actually took me a long like quite a while because I was just fiddling with stuff and testing things out. But it feels very organic, and so that's the kind of gameplay experience that you'd want, exactly as you said with Portal. Um, I don't know if they have the not the ability, but you know that I use the word technology in like the loosest sense, but just kind
Mm-hmm.
of the person tech, you know, to have actually gone and made a game like that, to have
Right.
been through that testing process, to understand training players, because right now the game doesn't do any of that, right? People have to rely on
No.
outside sources and watch videos and things. So that makes me wonder how it's going to work.
Yeah, that's the other side of it too, is like the logistics behind it. Like, is it a single player story in a multiplayer setting? You know what I mean? Because to me, it would be not. And again, this is probably too much. Like, this is too high of a bar. But having like your story affect my story, would be like a crazy thing in a multiplayer, like
Mm.
world. Like, I don't know, that'd just be insane. Like, I don't even know. So,
Yeah, I don't know either. I do think it's going to feel weird for veteran players no matter what, because if you're a brand new player in Tarkov, the scavs are very scary and very deadly.
mhm,
Whereas for us, we don't really care. You know, we know what the deal is. We know how to kill them pretty easily. So balancing that's going to be not that easy. Oh, I don't know. Just like the more I think about it, the more I feel that it it can't be that good.
I have my doubts.
Like
I have my doubts.
how can it be? They don't have the experience. I don't feel, you know, Valve's got people who've been building these games for years, right? And they produce a masterpiece like Portal after countless hours of testing and revisions and going back through everything. And like
Mhm,
I just feel that because they don't necessarily have access to those kind of developers because of where they're situated, because they haven't done any of that in their games before, they don't have any prior experience. I'm just not sure how they can be expected to produce something of that same quality. It would be unfair to expect that even,
right. That's
which
yeah.
was it was sort of my assumption before because I hadn't really thought about it. But I literally saw one. I should never go on Twitter. There's saw one comment, saw one tweet, and my whole universe about 1.0 storytelling just started to crumble around me.
Yeah.
Oh man, we'll see, we'll see. But I mean, at least it's probably paired me back to some kind of like reasonable expectation, as
Mhm.
opposed to being like crushed or bitterly disappointed if it turns up and it's, "Hello, stranger, you must go and get the bronze pocket watch." Oh no, I thought it was supposed to be a side quest. Oh, it is, but it's the start of the main. Oh, do you want to kill five scouts and get two shotguns? Oh,
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. I've
we'll see.
heard. I'll be briefly, but I've heard. I would like to actually look up Tobias's post and see if he has any detailed information about this. Um, but I've heard some people theorize that it would be like everyone enters the raid and are on their own story quests, and you hit a trigger, and then your story plays out in that raid with everyone else. So, like, if your trigger was, to go to the, let's use the raid series example, your own shoreline, you got to go to the RUAF port thing that's walled off, your trigger happens because you spawn on the map and now there's rogues at the port thing, and that affects everyone. I don't know. Yeah, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Poor Giga. He's all like gloomy now. His bubble was popped off one Twitter post. You know what?
It was.
You should double down, say no, mute that guy. live in ignorance is bliss, dog kid.
I don't mute anybody on Twitter. Secret fact. I try not to mute anybody. I like to see all of the random rubbishy posts that people put out because I don't want to live in an echo chamber. I want to see even posts I don't like. I want to see them. I try not to mute anybody, which is, I think, brave. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's okay. Also, I don't find myself getting. I don't. People don't really upset me either. I'm not just kind of what I am. I'm not really phased by what people talk about on the internet, especially random strangers. So it doesn't really bother me what other people say, particularly. I just try to absorb it all. Although I do feel recently, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I almost put a tweet out, but I thought it was too sarky and I didn't. There was a big phase about maybe a day or two ago, people saying, "Oh, if you click latest tweets instead of top tweets, then you get a completely different feed." And I changed it, and I was like, I have a completely different set of also totally relevant tweets. I was like, both suck. Like, I don't really like Twitter at the best of times. I've never really enjoyed it. Most of the time it's rubbish, and top tweets is rubbish, and chronological tweets I also thought was rubbish. So I was like, maybe this is the fact I don't mute enough people. I don't know. Maybe this is my own fault.
Well, I think it's like I can hearing you talk that you don't mute people because I have muted people before, and I think that spending more time on the platform probably directly correlates to me muting people. Like if you think about it, like if I mute someone, I would say my reasons because like, God, that is just, you literally ruined my day with that tweet. Just like an awful, like just like cringe, like pure cringe reading. Like, oh, this was on my feed and I had to read it. Like. So if I just spend less time on Twitter, I don't have to mute anybody because I just probably won't see the cringe tweets.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is my problem because I've been noticing this recently. So that you might like topic.
Is that like on the side?
No, it's in the middle, but it says like you might like topic, see more. And I feel like something is broken with my Twitter feed algorithm. So I literally just refreshed it now. The first one is a you might like suggestion of some random guy who I don't know who it is. He's 5-1 through the group of death. I don't even know what game. The next one is a Tarkov streamer, but just like a clip of their stream. The third one, I don't know who that is. Another tournament one. The fourth one is another tournament one. And the first 4 posts, 5, maybe I'm not even in the right place. Like, it's just like every, like I've got like strings of like 3 or 4 posts in a row that are all this like suggested you might like thing. I might just need to delete that because something about it's not working. And I'm seeing more and more unrelated stuff. And I don't like it. I think this maybe is my issue. Anyway. Social media rant over. So my Twitter's just a cesspit and it's just random things that I don't care about. It used to work quite well. And I don't know what I did. But now it's just a random assortment of people I don't know and topics that I don't care about.
Oh, Twitter. Love it and hate it.
And on that joyous note, see you guys later. No, I guess we should finish up, shouldn't we? I guess we should.
Yeah, but no, really. let's end it there. That's a good place to stop with Twitter.
Yep.
Seriously, guys, thank you for tuning in as always. Appreciate the support. And as always, catch you next week.
Bye-bye.